Hello, beautiful people. Welcome back. Sports Ball Talk Show. Gion's here, as
Hey, what's
always.
going on, guys? Repping Inter Miami, although we're talking about football today.
Hey, Inter Miami. We'll talk about soccer. I'd like to get into
we will.
soccer. We will. Not now, because there is way too much football stuff to talk about. The most important of which being the highest paid defensive player of all time as of today, Nick Bosa. He got signed to a 5-year extension up to $170 million, $122.5 guaranteed. That's a massive contract. Obviously, when you think of certain positional players and high contracts, there's like a few that come to mind of like, oh yeah, if this guy gets a big extension, it makes sense. Nick Bosa is one of those guys. You hear defensive player breaks the record for highest contract, you immediately think of guys like Nick Bosa, TJ Watt, someone like that who obviously is very deserving of that.
Right.
The thing, though, with every big contract is how does that affect the rest of the team? I understand, like, when it comes to defense, his position and probably cornerback are the two most important ones. So if you're going to put a lot of money into it, put it in one of those two, especially Nick Bosa, as good as he is. Definitely worth the money. And the Niners are in a situation where they don't have to pay anything on offense, really.
Right.
Because, I mean, obviously guys like Debo and McCaffrey take up some money, but Brock Purdy's on his rookie contract, and he was the last pick in the draft, so he's not making much money. And
Ayuk is on a pretty good, decent contract as well, and then, I mean...
He'll get an extension at some point, but it's not going to be huge being that he's the third weapon on the team.
Same Kittle and whatnot, so...
The only problem is going to be, assuming, let's say Brock Purdy just keeps being the starter for the next 5 years, eventually you're going to have to re-sign him, but that's towards the end of Bosa's contract anyway, and when you have Brock Purdy for peanuts compared to any other player in the NFL, because he's the last pick in the draft, which is the lowest paid pick in the draft, and he's on that rookie deal for 4 or 5 years, they can afford to go all out, especially years like this one where they're really in a position to win. Like most people, I think, have the Niners going to the Super Bowl for the NFC, at the very least making it to the NFC Championship game with 13, 14 wins.
I mean,
and
they don't really have much competition to begin with. I mean, no, the especially NFC is their division. The NFC has been
super weak.
Oh, yeah.
Their only challenger, I think, realistically, is probably the Atlanta Falcons.
Yeah, Falcons or Eagles.
Because the way I see it is the Falcons are going to go 17-0 and then win, and then it'll be one of those, like, you know when the Patriots did it in 07, but then they lost in the end after the undefeated season?
Right.
The Falcons are either going to go undefeated and win it all, or they're going to lose to the Niners in the NFC Championship game and be like one of those oh-so-close moments, because the Falcons are just that guy this season. Yeah. But yeah, Nick Bosa getting that extension, I don't think it's I don't want to say it was shocking, but for whatever reason, I didn't have Bosa on my radar for extensions this offseason. There was a lot of players that were. Trevon Diggs was one of them. He got his extension. Yeah. Obviously, the slew of quarterbacks like Herbert, Jalen Hurts, Lamar Jackson, all these guys were on my radar. They got their extensions. I don't know why Bosa wasn't, because he was due for it. But either way, good for the Niners. They got the best defensive player in the league, arguably. Definitively top 3. You can't argue outside that. But, him, TJ Watt, for number 1, maybe you throw in some cornerbacks like Sauce Gardner, although he's a rookie, but he is obviously incredible. Yeah, no. But good for Nick.
Yeah, and then that means he's going to play week 1 too, because that was up for contention. Because honestly, typically the 49ers, they either do the signings either the beginning of OTAs and minicamp or at the very end. So that's why I wasn't even thinking about it at all.
And also props to the Niners front office, because this is going to kind of lead us into a secondary story. But signing him before the season starts, because there's an issue with Chris Jones, who's up there with Nick Bosa for best defensive player in the league. I mean, obviously plays D tackle versus edge, which is a bit different. But, I mean, he right now is probably the best D tackle in the league. Aaron Donald did not have a great season last season. Nothing against him. He's just getting older. That's kind of what happens. So I would say Chris Jones is probably the best in the league as of last season. He had the best stats of any of them, and he puts an immense amount of pressure. Getting sacks on Jalen Hurts.
Pass rusher there is.
Putting pressure on the Eagles' offensive line last year is something that very few people were able to do, and Chris Jones did it throughout the entire Super Bowl. Yep. And him, obviously, along with many other players, was a large part of the reason they won, as close of a game as that was. So, but the Chris Jones situation is interesting because he wants to get paid like he's the best D tackle in the league, which I understand. And he's threatening to sit out until week 8 to make that happen.
Yeah, and you know what? Good for him. He needs to get paid.
Yeah, I know why you're saying that, because you don't want the Chiefs to be good. So don't even come in here and bullshit about, I think it's good for you. Because
I mean, from a player's perspective, yeah. I mean, if you're putting in all the work and all the effort, and you've demolished one of the best offensive lines in the NFL last year, yeah, I would want a fucking pay raise.
No, I would too, and I agree that he should be paid handsomely for his efforts. But, and I don't want to get into, like, the value of money thing, but just it feels like after a certain point, much more money doesn't really make much of a difference. Like 100 million versus 120 million, like obviously that's a large difference on paper, but if you're making $100 million, making an extra 20
Texas
isn't going to do a ton for you. Which once again, I mean, obviously it's his choice. Like he's the guy, he can demand whatever he wants. But the reason that I think it's not necessarily shitty on his part, because I do understand it, but if you were on any other team than the Chiefs and maybe a couple of others, then I would say it's fine. But there's guys like Mahomes, who is definitively the best quarterback in the NFL, and he's getting paid 8th highest in the league.
Oh, yeah.
And Travis Kelce, another one who's not even, I think he's like the 4th highest paid tight end in the league, maybe 5th at this point, because guys like Hawkinson, Waller, Kittle all make more.
Oh, yeah.
And Kittle, once again, or Kelce said on his podcast with Jason Kelce, New Heights, that he's okay getting paid less because he wants championships. Yep. And I understand, like, not everyone's in that mindset of I want championships. They're in the mindset of I want money. But when you're on a team, like, yeah, you're the best player in the league, so you should get paid that way. What about Mahomes? He's the best player in the league of any position, and he's not getting paid
overall.
Yeah, and he's not getting paid even as much as some other positional players.
There's a reason he's 99 on Madden.
Right, yeah, and I mean, he's taking these team-friendly deals, so is Travis Kelce, and, you know, there's players like that I feel like it's bad for the culture of the team, which is one of the most important things for winning, is having a good culture, because you can have all this scale and potential in the world, but if you have a really shitty locker room where people just aren't happy to play, aren't happy to be teammates with the people they're teammates with, you're not going to win games because you don't have that camaraderie, which is a large portion of the motivation that people need to get over the edge of winning a close game.
And I think that's what the Chiefs have an edge over every team, is that locker room connection. It's a brotherhood, unlike any other locker room.
That's one reason that a few weeks ago when we were talking about Mahomes' contract, I said that it was good for a slew of reasons, one of which being that the locker room, everyone in that locker room knows, not just because they're his teammate, but objectively that Mahomes is the best quarterback in the league, and they know that he's still taking tens of millions less per year than he could get from 31 other teams in the NFL, because he wants his other teammates to be able to make some money too. Because he could make the money, he could go make $60 million a year, but it would take away money from his teammates. The only reason he's doing that is so his teammates can get paid as well, so they're incentivized to stay. And so I think it's just a little bit weird of Chris Jones to not want to buy into that mentality too, although I understand getting a whole 53-man roster plus the practice squad and bench players and all that stuff in on the same mentality is tough. It's a shitty situation, not just because I like the Chiefs, but just because it's a team that I don't think that it's going to be the difference between them winning 14 games and going negative, losing Chris Jones, although he is a playmaker. It's not any one position beyond maybe a quarterback isn't really going to cost you that many games. But
you also got to think about this, though. Like, the amount of stress relief that Chris Jones provides to the defense so that the defense stays healthy throughout.
Right, yeah.
And then not having him on there as often could drain your defense, lead potential injuries. I'm not saying, like, he's the end-all, be-all, but, like, things pile up, and they'll slippery slope down to this, to the point like, okay, you have other people step up, maybe younger players, they have a higher chance of getting hurt, or your offense is going to have to constantly be out there, or have to exhaust themselves just to catch up if in the event that the Chiefs are down, which normally doesn't happen, but
it's always a possibility.
Yeah, it's always a possibility.
Yeah, it's always a possibility, and I agree. Like, there's more than just the stats when it comes to a player being great, especially defensive players, because like if you can take 2-on-1 for the offensive line, and then your edge can get just 1-on-1 with a guy who he knows he can beat, then that's obviously huge. And like, you're not getting the sack on your record, but that's getting a sack for the team because of how good you are.
Right.
But the Chiefs also just don't have the money to afford it at this point, so they're going to have to cut a lot of players to be able to pay Chris Jones what he wants, which is why obviously it doesn't, like, I can't convince him, I can't change his mind, any of that stuff, but it just, I wish he would understand a little bit more of, like, taking a team-friendlier deal, and he could be offered a team-friendly deal and take it. I don't know. He might not have even been offered a good deal, like even a team-friendly deal where he's still making, 10, 15, 20 million a year, but not 30 million a year like he wants. And maybe he'll accept that. I mean, we obviously don't know what the contract negotiations are behind closed doors, but I mean, he said he's willing to sit out half the season to get his contract, which I mean, I just don't think that ever works out for players. Like, when was the last time someone sat out and it paid off?
Le'Veon, and he became an absolute bum afterward. I mean, he sat out an entire season.
Yeah.
And went to the Jets, went to the Ravens, and
did nothing.
Nothing.
Deshaun Watson, I mean, obviously we'll see what happens this season, but he sat out with the Texans, ended up getting paid on the Browns. So I guess monetarily it worked out for him, but in terms of winning, it hasn't yet. And there's other instances of this throughout like recent NFL history, but nothing as big as probably Le'Veon Bell's one of the biggest ones because he was that guy whenever he was in his prime. But it just typically doesn't work out whenever you sit out because at the end of the day, there are plenty of other players that would love to have his position, and even though they're not as good as him, even though they're not as good as him, they can provide a lot of value, and it's hard to quantify value in terms of dollars, but you can find another D tackle. I mean, because you also got to think about, like, imagine all the players that want to play for the Chiefs. Like, imagine all the other D tackles that are pretty good, not as good as Chris Jones, obviously, but that are good enough that they would fit in with the Chiefs' scheme. And
with a coach like Andy Reid there, and then their whole coaching staff is probably one of the best there is. And even with, I would say, position by position, they don't have the best players, but for whatever reason, their defense just always tends to mesh. It's not like the best defense, but it's not the worst.
Well, that's exactly it. The Chiefs have never had a phenomenal defense, but they have a good defensive scheme. Mm-hmm. And that's like what you were saying earlier with Chris Jones being able to put enough pressure to allow other guys to get sacked and put pressure on the QB in more of a hands-on way than just forcing the line back.
And set them up in positions to win, too.
Right. But, I mean, think about, like, any other DT that's, let's say top 15, like on the 10 to 15 range, maybe 8 to 10 range, that would be willing to take a team-friendly deal because they know that if they're on the Chiefs, they're probably going to go win a Super Bowl, and they're at the point in their career where they want that. So,
and it's that motivation factor as well. You're with
the Chiefs. Yeah, you're with the current dynasty of the NFL, and that's huge. That's a big draw for the team. And on top of that, they let Frank Clark walk this offseason. He was their edge, and not that he was to the level of Chris Jones, but he was a really good edge. He was a solid player, and if they're going to let him walk because they wouldn't pay him enough, I understand you're better, Chris Jones, but at what point do you think they're going to, like, I wonder how much leverage he thinks he has in this, because if the Chiefs aren't willing to pay him, they're going to let him walk. It's not like the Chiefs are going to eventually cave and pay him money they don't have or violate NFL rules with cap space and get hit with massive penalties and things like that, and all that stuff that leads to horrible penalties down the line for the franchise. They're not going to do that just to keep Chris Jones. They'll go find another DT that wants to play for the team. So, I mean, I don't know how it's going to affect the Chiefs. I mean, we'll see these next few weeks. I don't know. I think he'll get a contract within the next 3 to 4 weeks. Just, I have a hunch. There's based off of nothing. I'm not going to pretend like I'm smart when saying that. It's just a hunch. I feel like he'll get one around week 3 or 4. But I don't know. It's just tough. But the other thing with the Chiefs right now is that Kelsey's hurt.
Yeah.
So week 1,
hyperextended leg.
Which we'll go ahead and get into the week 1 schedule of games. So starting with the Thursday night football game, Chiefs versus Lions. Chris Jones obviously not going to be playing because of his contract issues, and Kelsey hyperextended his knee.
Right.
So it is the perfect opportunity for the Lions to win. But here's the thing that I'm going to say now, and I'm going to say it again, but I want to say it before we mention the outcomes of any game. None of what happens in week 1 matters. Because every single game, you can look at any game in the schedule of week 1, they're all set up to be blasted for the loser to be blasted by the media. In any game. Like, pick any random game. So we'll start off with the Chiefs-Lions, and we'll go one by one as well, but let's start off with the Chiefs-Lions. If the Lions lose, they're bust. They were supposed to be at this year. They were supposed to get 12 wins and win the division, NFC Championship game, Super Bowl. If they lose, then they're bust. If the Chiefs lose, the Lions are the real thing. The Chiefs are busting. They just won a Super Bowl, and they can even win against the Lions.
All these games this week for headlines. Yeah. Every game this week is a headline.
Yeah, Bills versus Jets. It's another one where both teams were there's rumors in Buffalo of players getting sick of getting close and not winning, and if they lose week 1, then they're automatically okay. You have guys like Stephon Diggs who he's denied these rumors, but the media doesn't care about that. That is visible. That is very unhappy with the situation and wants to leave if they can't get some wins. And then the Jets who invested everything into Aaron Rodgers and Dalvin Cook and everyone else. That defense.
The Jets are on the up and up, or the Bills are back going down.
Either way, the franchise is going to get clowned on who loses. Yeah. Another one is let's see, Dolphins Chargers, both teams that this year should be incredible. Last year they were only out of the playoffs.
Teams, man.
The only reason they were out of the playoffs and didn't make a run is because of injuries. And so this year,
for both teams, actually,
that's what I'm saying. Yeah. So either way, whichever one loses, the media's gonna say it doesn't matter about injuries. You're just a bum ass team anyway.
Jacksonville Colts. Is AR the real thing?
Yeah, is AR going to be a bust after one freaking NFL game?
Are the Colts just going to continue their slump, or is Jacksonville the real deal?
Is Jacksonville the real deal? Exactly. The AFC South, is Calvin Ridley and Trevor Lawrence really going to have that connection that everyone wants?
The only game where I don't see a storyline is Houston, Baltimore.
That's
The
just a
Ravens
game.
are just going to take a burn dookie on Texans.
I mean, that's going to be 80-0. But like, there's other games like the same thing with the Packers, Bears, like 49ers, Steelers. Like, there's all these games that just have storylines. So before we get into this, and even next week, we'll do a little bit of like satirical overreacting, obviously, because that's just fun. Everyone likes that. But we're not going to legitimately say any team is a trash can after next week unless it is a like 50-0 blowout without any injuries or anything shady going on.
The reality of things is with fantasy and NFL, you don't really know how well a team meshes until like after week 5 or 6. Week 5 or 6, everyone's starting to come together. The schemes are getting better. We'll know who's hurt, who's not, and everyone will typically be informed then. The first 5-6 weeks of the NFL don't matter. It's what comes after everything else.
And I mean, there's been plenty of examples of that. Just a couple years ago, I'm going to mention the two biggest ones: the Cardinals 2 years ago and the Steelers 3 years ago. Both were like had the longest undefeated streaks. I think the Steelers went 12-0 before they lost, and the Cardinals were 8, 9, 10, or 11-0,
something like that.
And they both busted immediately. First, either they didn't make the playoffs or they were first round exits. The Steelers got destroyed by the Browns in Big Ben's last game. So yeah, being good early in the season doesn't necessarily matter. Obviously, wins are wins, and you need wins to make the playoffs. And then once you're in the playoffs, nothing matters. But if you get like 7 wins at the beginning of the season and then you show nothing after that, then like you're not going to win a game in the playoffs, because whether it's that your players got hurt, you got injured, got tired, whatever it is,
morale too, man.
Yeah, whatever
Morale's
the case is,
one.
if you can't carry that into the postseason, none of it matters. No one cares if you're a first round playoff out unless you're a franchise that hasn't made the playoffs in 4 years, like the Browns a couple years ago, and they made their playoff run. That was impressive because it was the Browns, but they also won a game and almost beat the Chiefs. And as a Chiefs fan, they should have beat the Chiefs. It wasn't a horrible non-targeting call against them in the end of the second half, which led to the Browns not scoring a touchdown and the Chiefs scoring an extra touchdown, which would have won the Browns the game.
Yep. I
digress. I'm not going to get mad on behalf of that from several years ago, although it does sting because I love Baker Mayfield. But give me your analysis of the Chiefs-Lions game, as this is arguably the most important game of Week 1, has the most eyes on it. Give me your analysis.
So here's the thing. The Lions, they don't got Jameson Williams this week. They're not going to have him for the next 6 because of suspension. But they still have a solid O-line, decent running back core. Jahmyr Gibbs, a lot of people are saying Jahmyr Gibbs' first game, he's going to make a lot of defensive backs look like idiots. That's what I've been heard. You have Amon-Ra, very solid receiver. Probably, for me, going to be one of the top 5 receivers.
I agree. I think Sun God is going to go off this season.
God's going to be
I think he's going to be top
amazing.
5 in production this season.
Jared Goff has been fitting well with the scheme that they have there. They have a great offensive coordinator. The Lions' defense has actually improved. Tremendously over the offseason.
They made a couple. Who was it that they just recently signed?
C.J. Gardner-Johnson.
C.J. Gardner-Johnson.
Yes.
That's huge. Aiden Hutchinson obviously had a phenomenal rookie year last year.
Great rookie. And he's only going to step it up.
He had
Malcolm
6
Rodriguez,
sacks and 3 interceptions, which is a really weird stat line, but it's crazy.
Especially for an edge rusher.
Yeah.
And overall, the Lions seem pretty well balanced. They have a great run game. Even with missing Jameson Williams, they have a great receiver core.
Yeah, like that's not going to really hold them back.
And they have a good rookie tight end, Sam Laporta. He's been meshing really well with Goff in the offseason.
And tight end is probably I'm not going to say it is, but it is one of the least valuable positions on the field anyway. Like, you don't win... You don't win a season because you had a good tight end. Like, that very rarely does that happen.
No, I'm kidding.
No, Gronk is one of the... I'll give you Gronk. Guys like Gronk, Kelsey, Tony Gonzalez, Antonio Gates are some of the few. But most, like 99% of the time, a tight end is the least valuable position on the field. Like, you'd rather have a really good running back or quarterback or D-tackle or edge or quarterback than a good tight end. But... it's obviously important when you're missing a guy like Jameson Williams to have another guy who can receive the ball, especially when you got Amon-Ra, who's probably going to get double coverage most plays. But I think he's still going to surpass any quarterback that he plays against.
He's going to have double-digit receptions, I'm telling you right now.
Oh, yeah, I think he gets 10, 11 balls, especially because it's going to be a high-scoring game.
Oh, it's going to be.
Even with Kelsey being out, especially with Chris Jones being out. Like,
Chris Jones and Kelsey.
And the thing that I'm most excited for is, I don't know if you remember, I don't even know how much you were watching football back then, but the Chiefs versus the Rams, and I think it was 2019, the one that they each scored over 50 points.
I have not watched that game.
Dude, it is the most...
This is what this is setting up to be.
This is when Goff was on the Rams. That's my point.
Right.
And so this is... I really...
Revenge game.
The Rams won.
For Patrick Mahomes.
I mean, yeah, I guess it could be, but obviously the Chiefs are a lot better of a team, and just overall they've done more...
Mahomes lost to Jared Goff.
This is 2019 Rams, dude, and they Aaron Donald, they had a nasty defense, but it was the greatest football game of all time. Every single play was like an interception, a sack, a fumble, an 80-yard touchdown to Tyreek. It was an insane game. I think he scored 108 points total between the two of them, something like that. It was insane.
I wonder who bet the over on that game.
I wonder who bet over 100 points on that game. You must have made an ass load of money.
Yeah.
But either way, I'm kind of expecting a game like that. Obviously, Kelsey being out kind of inhibits that a little bit, but the Chiefs have a really good receiving core. They drafted some good receivers. You've got Kadarius Toney, Sky Moore. You've got Jerry McKinnon, who's one of the best receiving backs in the league.
Isaiah Pacheco's set up to destroy this game too. I mean,
yeah, oh yeah.
I mean, the Lions, although they've improved in defense, Pacheco has plenty of opportunity for Mahomes to check down and him run in the open space.
Yeah, so I think it's going to be a high-scoring game. I think both teams are going to score over 30 points. I think if I have to give an exact score, let me do some mental calculations. I'm going to go 38-32 Chiefs. That's my prediction.
Like that.
38-32 Chiefs. Put money on the exact score. I'm scared the Chiefs are going to lose.
30. I have 38.
I'm scared.
I have 38. 28 Lions.
Nah, I mean,
I got the Lions on this one, man.
If there's a game that the Chiefs are going to lose, it's going to be this one, I think.
Yeah, just because of all the issues.
The injuries, contract issues, things like that. It's week 1, so, teams are figuring things out, but...
So nothing's going to be perfect, set in stone.
Right, but
first time around.
I gotta bet on my
Kadarius
Chiefs.
Toney coming off an injury.
Yeah, he's still going to be a dog, though.
Yeah, he's going to
be because he wants to play for the Chiefs.
Everyone's saying that Kadarius Toney is not going to be good. You got to realize this kid is really talented.
Every time he catches the ball, he's electric. Every time. The problem is whenever he was on the Giants,
great agility.
He did not want to play on the Giants, which I hate because I like the Giants too. But he did not want to play on the Giants team. That's why he just didn't play. That's why he had injuries the whole time. Which whatever you can agree or disagree with that being shitty.
But toxic wide receiver room, especially with what's his face from the Lions.
Tate? Golden Tate?
No,
Darius
Golden
Slayton?
Tate. No. They signed him for $17 million, and then he left. He was supposedly super good. I don't remember his name. That's how bad he is.
I know you're talking about.
You know what I'm talking about.
He's on the tip. I hate that.
He's on the tip of my tongue.
What the hell?
Toxic.
Keep talking. I'm gonna look up who this player is. Because I know it's on the tip of my tongue.
Moving along.